Hi, hello, and welcome to Lily's Library. So today we're going to be talking about some books by trans and non-binary authors or books featuring trans and non-binary characters. So the Trans Rights Readathon is literally right around the corner, so we're just going to get straight into all of the recommendations and also talk about my TBR and my plans for the readathon. So if you haven't heard of the Trans Rights Readathon, this is an annual readathon that has been going for the past few years now, and every year in March we basically read a whole bunch of books by trans authors and non-binary authors or books featuring those characters, and also show support for different trans organisations. So I'm still deciding who I will be donating to or what organisation I will be donating to this time around, but seeing as I'm based in Australia, I typically donate to organisations that do stuff within Australia. This year I'm not too sure whether I'm going to change that up, just given the current climate and situation in the US. So I might see if I can split my donations between a local organisation here and then one in the US, maybe someone in an organisation in Kansas, seeing as the changes have happened there with driver's licenses. But it is just such a great way to really show support and uplift trans voices and non-binary voices, and it's just such a fun thing to participate in. So this year the readathon is being extended and it starts on March 17 and goes until the very end of the month. So we have quite a few weeks for this. We have literally half of the month, and I'm just really excited for it. So this year there is a Storygraph challenge which runs from March until the end of the year that I will be participating in, and it's just got a whole bunch of different ways you can read trans books. But then there is also a little bingo card, so I'll put it up on the screen, but we've got a whole bunch of different ones. I don't know whether I'll be able to complete some of these. I'm going to see if I can, but I just kind of want to focus on reading books that I've had my eye on for a little while or that have been on my TBR for a bit. So we're not going to be super strict on this bingo card, but I'll put it up on the screen if you do want to participate. There is a spot for non-binary and gender expansive rep with diverse bodies, a book about trans elders or trans history, trans masc or trans man rep by BIPOC author, two-spirit indigiqueer and indigenous gender expansive rep, trans plus books featuring joy, love or resistance, a book about trans youth or that imagines trans future, a trans book someone recommended to you, trans femme or trans women rep with multiple trans characters, and intersectional trans rep outside of your own experience. So this bingo card also kind of goes along with the Storygraph challenge, but we're going to be talking about the books I'm planning on reading for the readathon first. Now I have 3 physical books I'm tossing up between. I don't think I'm going to get to all of these. I would like to maybe get to 2 of these, but we'll see how we go. If I can get to just one of these, that will also be fantastic. But the first one is a middle grade book that I actually tried reading a few years ago for the readathon and just never really got far into it, but I want to give it another go, and that is Euphoria Kids. This is by Alison Evans. This is an Australian book, which I do really love books set in Australia. It's very just nice reading a book that has familiar settings, but this follows a bunch of young kids who have got some like witch curses and stuff like that going on, and we've got a bunch of different queer and trans and non-binary representation in this, so I'm very excited for this one. Now the next 2 I'm a bit unsure of. I'm tempted to read The Battle Drum by Sarah El-Arifi. This is book 2 in the Final Strife, or in the Ending Fire trilogy. This is a very long book. This is one I've been wanting to read for ages. It's on my 12 books in 12 months TBR. Now, I was originally planning on reading a different book in March for this TBR, but I think I'm going to go to this one instead because it just does fit the prompt for the readathon. But we've got lots of queer characters in this book, including trans characters, so it is a very good one for this prompt. This is a high fantasy, epic fantasy trilogy, and it's about where the color of your blood determines your rank and place in the world and in society, which is really fascinating. And then I'm also tossing up whether I do try and read Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a very new addition to my TBR. This is book 1 in a trilogy. I know we've got lots of queer representation in this, and I think it's either non-binary or trans. I'd have to double check, but we do have that kind of representation in it, so it is a really good pick for this as well. Then I've got a bunch of books on my Kobo that I am planning on reading. I wanted to have some really easy options and some books that I could just take around with me because the Kobo is lightweight and it's just easy to cart around with me. So I have got 4 different books on here that are part of my TBR. They're all very short ones. They are 3 novellas and 1 manga. So we have got In the Watchful City. I'll put the cover up on the screen. I can't see who the author is, but this is a fantasy novella, and we've got non-binary and trans rep in this. And then I've got Finna and Defect. This is by Nino Cipri. These are novellas as well. These are kind of like sci-fi ones, and we've got trans and non-binary representation as well. And then we finally got Boys Run the Riot, which is a manga. I want to read volume 1, and this is about a young trans boy and yeah, kind of finding a place in society and in the world. And they all sound really fun and like pretty easy reads, but I will definitely have more updates on them later. We will have more stuff going on my TikTok and my Instagram for the readathon to show what I'm reading and to do reviews for them as I finish them. But I'm very excited and nervous about some of these, but I think the novellas and the manga will be a really good way to get quite a few books in and to be able to raise a bit of money. Those are kind of the books I will be focusing on myself. Okay, now moving on to a bunch of recommendations. So these ones are all going to be mostly fantasy and sci-fi and horror and everything. So I might start with all the YA books first, and then we'll move on to the adult ones. So the very first book I want to talk about is one I actually read, I think in the first Trans Rights Readathon, and that is Pet by Kweke Emezi. So Emezi is a trans and non-binary author themselves, and in this book we follow our main character Jam, who is a young trans girl, and this is set in a world where there are kind of these monsters behind closed doors, and our main character is doing this painting that comes to life, or one of her mother's paintings comes to life, and is this angel-like creature that is helping her hunt down these monsters. It's really fun and a really heavy read at the same time, just the way it kind of looks at the world and who the monsters in real life actually are and can be. It is just really nice, and the representation in this is really good as well. Like I said, Jam, our main character, she is trans. She is also non-verbal, which is a very interesting aspect to include in a book, and I just had such a good time with it. These books are also very short. There is a sequel, Bitter, which I've been meaning to read but have been struggling to track down, so I'm hoping to get to it in the future, but it is a prequel to this one. Just all of Emezi's books sound absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to get to more of them. But if you are on the hunt for something that is really fun and quick to read, I highly recommend this one. Next up, I have got a YA horror, and that is They Bloom at Night. This one I read a few months ago and I really loved. This is by Trang Than Tran, and this is such an interesting book. It really looks at what it means to be a teenager and kind of coming into your body and finding out who you really are, and that exploration of gender and sexuality. We've got lots of queer representation in this. We've got bisexual representation and trans rep and non-binary rep, and it's just such a fascinating look at gender expression and transition as well. But like I said, this is a horror. It's more of a climate horror. It's set in this world after there has been a really severe storm, and there is this red algae bloom that is slowly killing a lot of the plant life and wildlife and destroying the water and ecosystem in this area. And our main character, they're tasked to look into the disappearances of some of the people in the town in order for them to stay there and to survive. And it's just really fun and really gross at times, and I absolutely adore this one. Next up, I've got 2 books by Aidan Thomas. You kind of can't talk about trans books without talking about Aidan Thomas. His books are just absolutely beautiful and I love them so much. I've only read 2 of them and I really need to read more, and he's got a lot more coming out soon, but I absolutely adore them. The first one I actually read was Cemetery Boys. This is a very Halloween-esque book. So we follow a young trans boy in this who is kind of trying to become is trying to come into his family's and his culture's powers. And because he is trans, a lot of people don't think he'll actually be able to develop the powers that he wants to, but he kind of ends up proving them wrong and inadvertently raises from the dead the ghost of one of his high school bullies. And they have to kind of work together to find out what's going on and piece together this mystery, and it's just so sweet and fun. And there is a sequel coming out very soon, so this is the perfect time to be picking this one up. I'm planning on rereading this one soon and then pre-ordering the sequel and reading it as soon as it releases. The next book is a trial-based one. Think The Hunger Games meets Percy Jackson, and that is the Sunbearer Trials. This is also a duology. I've yet to read the second book, but I absolutely loved this book so much. So this follows the children of godly parents. They are demigods, and they have to basically compete against each other in this trial system, and it's very chaotic and crazy. We've got so much queer representation in here. Our main character, he is trans, and then we've got lots of other queer relationships and queer dynamics as well in representation, and it was just so fun and absolutely infuriating in the best ways possible. When I was reading this, I did a buddy read with a friend, and we were just both so infuriated by these children, but it is just such an accurate depiction of teenagers and kids and the dumb decisions they make in this kind of situation, and I absolutely loved this book so much. I do really need to reread it and get to the sequel because it came out a little while ago and I just haven't got around to doing that, so I'm going to order myself a copy, and I think I'll be rereading this and reading the other one sometime in the coming months. Now, for more YA horror, we've got one of the kings of YA horror in my opinion, and that is Andrew Joseph White. So I've got 2 of his books here, but I will be talking about all 3 of the YA books that are currently out because I loved all of them. So his first book, and the first one I read, was Hell Followed With Us, and this is such a horrifying and brilliant book. All of these books are just phenomenal in their own way. But this is set in kind of like a post-apocalyptic version of the US once kind of the end of the world is happening, kind of like in the sense of the Bible. This starts with a woman that has been going on a pilgrimage sort of thing and ends up spreading this disease that is killing everyone and turning people into these really horrifying beings. And our main character is trying to flee this religious kind of compound that he's been brought up in and is meant to be their next angel and bring upon the true end of the world and everyone's salvation. And he ends up fleeing to this other area and joining into this group of ragtag teenagers that are all just trying to survive and get rid of this religious freaks and take them down. And it is so heartbreaking and horrifying and beautiful, and I just absolutely love this. Our main character is a trans boy, and we've got lots of other queer representation as well. We've got gay representation, lesbian representation, we've got neurodivergent representation. It is just absolutely phenomenal and one of my favorite books. I still think about some scenes from this all the time. Then the next book of his is The Spirit Bares Its Teeth. This one is a Victorian horror. This one is brutal. If you're not really a fan of body horror, I mean, all of his books have a lot of horror in them, but there's some scenes in here I really found difficult, especially when it comes to pregnancy and stuff like that, and the discussions of it. It is just quite disturbing, but this is a very interesting read as well. So like I said, this is a Victorian horror. It's set in a world where people have different kind of magical abilities. They can be magicians or these different things depending on the color of their eyes. And our main character, he was born with violet eyes, and that means that he needs to basically be married to another wealthy man, and his job is to just have children and birth more magicians and everything and more people with these powers. But he doesn't know what to do that, and he wants to actually be a surgeon and to be able to achieve all these things that he sees his brother and all these other men doing, but he can't. And it's looking at the kind of things that he goes through trying to deal with this. He gets sent to this school for like wayward girls or something like that, and kind of uncovers the mysteries and the ghosts that are within there. It is such an interesting read. I highly recommend the audiobook of this because that's how I listened to it, and it was just absolutely insane in the best way, and I loved it so much. This has also got trans representation as well, like I said, and it's got a really sweet ending to this, and a very unexpected ending, I would say, and I absolutely loved it. It is just amazing. Then finally, we have got Compound Fracture. This is absolutely horrifying as well. This is set in the Appalachian area, I believe that's how you say it, and we kind of look at these really deep blood wars between different families and the shit that our main character goes through. In its own way, I'd say this is the most horrifying books out of the three of them because it is probably the most realistic. Like, we still have got ghosts and all sorts of vengeances from the dead and that kind of thing, but the treatment of our main character in this is absolutely so fucked up. Like, it just feels so realistic because it is in such a modern setting, and it's very much what so many young queer kids experience in that kind of area of the US and in the South. It is just such a horrifying book, and I love it so much. I do really need to get a physical copy of it, but Andrew Joseph White is just the king of horror. I've yet to read his adult horror because it sounds too much for me, but the YA stuff is perfection. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about some adult books now. So I've got a few short ones that I might talk about first. So the first one is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. This is actually a whole series, and in this we've got our main character, who I believe is non-binary, whose job is basically to go around the kingdom and collect different people's stories. So this first one, it specifically focuses on this woman that was sold to be the handmaiden in a royal palace and all the stuff that ends up happening there. We've got sapphic representation in this as well as trans and non-binary rep, and these are just so fun and sweet, very short as well. Next up, I've got two T. Kingfisher books. These are ones in a series, which the third book is actually out now, so it's the perfect time to read all three of these. But this is the, I don't actually remember what this is called. I think this is the Sworn Soldier trilogy or series, but first we have got What Moves the Dead, and then we have got What Feasts at Night, and there is a third one that's just come out that I need to get a copy of, but I really enjoyed these. I think I read this one for a Trans Rights Readathon as well, and these are just so horrifying in the best ways possible. I love really uncomfortable horror that's more about the weird things going on than like really gory, full-on stuff. So What Moves the Dead is actually a Fall of the House of Usher retelling, and it's really interesting the twists and turns it takes in this. But in this we follow Alex, who is a soldier. They've got a lot of PTSD, and they have been invited to a old family friend's house because one of their friends is actually dying, and they're going there to try and find out what's what's happening and to be there in their friends' final moments. And in a way, they start piecing together this mystery and figuring out what is actually going on in this house and why the dead seem to be moving. And it is just so fun and disturbing, and I absolutely love it. If you love weird things with like plants and fungi and everything, I highly recommend this one. And then the sequel, What Feasts at Night, is set a little bit after the events of What Moves the Dead, and it's kind of following Alex as they are trying to piece together, or as they are trying to heal from their trauma from the war, as well as like exploring some really fucked up things that are happening in their house that they've kind of abandoned. This has got some Slavic folklore in it, I believe, which is really interesting. I don't remember the actual name for it, but it is this creature that kind of hunches over the end of the bed or on people's chests and steals their breath, and it is just so horrifying, but it is so good. These books are just absolutely incredible. I love them so much, and they have got amazing non-binary representation. Then another book with non-binary rep, we've got The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar. I absolutely love this book. I want to reread it again. It is so fun. It's so whimsical and just has the perfect like fairy tale vibes in this. But in this, we follow two sisters who are part of this family that are very wealthy within their magic in a way. Their whole family tradition is to sing to these trees, and in return, it kind of grants them powers. And one day, one of the sisters is forced into a marriage with another wealthy neighbor who is wanting to cash in on these powers, and she ends up kind of fleeing away. And we follow the story as the sister is trying to find the other one with the help of one of their lovers or something, who is a kind of like fairy being and everything, and is non-binary. And it's just so fun and queer, and I absolutely love it so much. It's got such beautiful writing, and it's got really beautiful illustrations within it as well that just complement the story so much. Okay, next I've got a sci-fi horror, and that is Leech by Hiran Enz, or Enez. I don't know how to say the last name, but the author is non-binary. This is such an interesting horror. It is a bit confusing as well. So I'd say if you have read a bit of horror and sci-fi before, you might have better time with this than if you are just starting in the genre, because there is a bit of confusing language within this. But this is set in an isolated chateau where the kind of doctor or medical practitioner suddenly dies from this strange virus sort of thing, and a new one is sent in their place to kind of piece together what happened. And it's really interesting the way that this kind of shapes and changes, and when you find out what is actually going on here, it is so fascinating. I don't really want to say too much more than that, just because the reveal of what it is just so worth it to go in blind and not really know anything more than that. So I would say just go in knowing that, don't even read the blurb. It is just so interesting and so just a really fun and horrifying read in the best possible ways. I read this quite a few years ago and still think about it, and I'm probably going to be rereading it soon because it is just such a fascinating read. I've also got another sci-fi. This one wasn't the biggest hit for me, but I think a lot of people would still enjoy it, and that is Hammerging Luck. This is by Makana Yamamoto, which there is actually a sequel kind of coming out now, or that is just released. So again, perfect time to be reading these books. But this is a heist book. We've got lots of queer representation in this. We've got trans and non-binary and lots of lesbian and queer and just so much representation in this. It is absolutely incredible. But our main character is basically just gotten out of prison and is being signed on to one final heist, basically. And they have to go in with a whole bunch of people to try and take down this giant tech company, and it's following them as they go and just complete this heist. Now, this didn't 100% work for me. I just felt like the pacing was a bit off, and I didn't like some of the romance and the relationships that were brought up in this, but it is still a really, really entertaining read, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it quite a lot. I just had a few issues with that, but if you do love romance in your heists, then I think you would enjoy this. And it is just a very fun read and very quick as well. And I've heard decent things about the sequel, which is the Obake Code, which is one of the characters in this. We've also got a bit of Polynesian representation in this as well. So it's just a very fun and chaotic book. Okay, next I've got a completed duology, and that is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is book one in the Radiant Emperor duology. The second one is He Who Drowned the World. The author Shelley Parker Chan is non-binary, and then we've also got genderqueer representation in this with our main character. So these are historical fantasies. I definitely say they're a lot more heavy on the historical than they are on the fantasy elements, but these are really fascinating. We follow a young girl who is in a very impoverished and poor town, and they are forced to fend for themselves and to hunt and to find insects and stuff in order to eat. But throughout all of her life, our character has also been told that she would never amount to anything, that her future has nothing in store, but her brother would always amount to greatness. But when he eventually ends up dying after their father's death, she realizes that he took on her destiny, so it's only right that she tries to take on his. And we follow her as she goes to this monastery to fill his place there and to kind of have a place to live and to get food. And the path that this takes her on, with the war that ends up breaking out and her fight for survival and her fight to become the next emperor of China. It is just absolutely so fun and I love it so much. It's just such a great book, and I do really love the exploration of sexuality and gender in these books. It is just incredible. Then I kind of spoke about this book earlier, but we've got The Final Strife by Sarah El-Arifi. This is book 1 in a completed trilogy called the Ending Fire trilogy. These are high fantasies. This is set in a world where the color of your blood kind of determines your place and rank within society. And it's really interesting the way that this looks at power dynamics and the way that people are consistently oppressed and the tools that are used to keep them oppressed. It is very horrifying, but very intriguing as well, and we've got lots of representation in this. We've got lots of queer representation as well as transgender representation within our 3 main characters that we follow, and it is just really beautiful and incredible, and I just love Sarah El-Arifi's writing so much. So I'm hoping to actually get to book 2 for the readathon, but if you are hoping to start a trilogy through this readathon, I think this would be the perfect one to go for, because it is just absolutely incredible and it's just such a fascinating world. But those are a whole stack of different trans and non-binary books that you can be picking up for the Trans Rights Readathon. I will link the Instagram page for the challenge down below, or for the readathon down below, so you can find out more details and register to it, because they do like having people registered to keep track of numbers. But I hope you do end up picking some of these books up, because honestly, all of the ones I have read, they're pretty generally fantastic and such incredible reads, and there's just so many great books out there that you just need to look out for and explore more for. So I hope this video was helpful and gave you some inspiration for what to read, or maybe opened your eyes to some books you hadn't heard of before and a readathon you hadn't heard of before. But let me know if you are planning on participating or if you have heard of the readathon before, and yeah, make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.